Good morning. My name is Galen Ackerman, and this is the Hydra Bed Story. It all begins here on our family farm. My wife Linda and I grew up a few miles apart, but we really never did like each other. My parents, George and Wilma, raised Charolais cattle, and as a side note, as you can see in this picture, my dad always did run flatbed pickups on the farm. As a matter of fact, they went on their honeymoon in a flatbed pickup. Linda's parents, Harry and Ann Bingman, raised registered Angus cattle. After all those years of not liking each other, after we graduated in 1973, we became really good friends and got married. We moved into this tiny little 10 by 50 trailer house that my dad had had the foresight to locate and get moved to the family farmstead where the old house used to sit. This is the mid-70s. Linda and I were working for Wayne Detman and living south of Oneida, Kansas in one of his farmhouses. In this time, hundreds and hundreds of little square bales were necessary for feeding the family cow herd and our own cow herd. But there was a game changer on the way. In the early 70s, Vermeer introduced its large round baler, and the baler had arrived in our county, and there was big promise that these big round bales were going to eliminate most of the labor associated with all those small square bales. And there was truth in that. They did eliminate all the hay rack loading and all that, but moving these big rascals around was tough. They weighed up to 2,000 pounds, and they weren't very easy to move or transport. This local built bale cart was a common way that, in fact, both Linda and I as high schoolers spent part of our summers hauling bales around for our dads with this exact same kind of cart, one bale at a time. One problem that I saw that I didn't like was the waste that was involved in feeding these bales, and I wanted a way to unroll these. Even as a high schooler, I knew there had to be a better way. In early 1978, my parents asked us if we would move back to the family farm, and the plan was that my younger brother Roger and I were going to take over running the operation while Dad spent more time with the family's livestock auction business. This trailer house was the home we moved into. Tragically, just a few months later, Roger was killed in a tractor accident. We were building a new feedlot at the time, and all of that plan and every other dream that I had was in upheaval. Our entire family was in shock. I was now alone in what had been planned to be a two-brother operation. I really had to get more efficient, and Linda was pregnant and unable to help me as much as she had been. So I knew that I wanted a way to handle bales with a pickup instead of a tractor. The problem is there were a couple of companies making a bolt-in unit like this one at the time, but they occupied the whole bed, and you couldn't pull a gooseneck trailer or really do much else with that pickup with one of these. So in the summer of '79, about the time Sean, our first daughter, was born, I started dreaming and gathering material, scrap material, and starting in on building a flatbed that also had an integrated bale handling mechanism. I worked in the north end of this shed, which had formerly been a corn crib. My tools were a cutting torch, a big hammer, a half-inch electric drill, and this homemade DC welder that my dad and I had built. A few months later, this is what came out of the shed, and it did look just like a plain flatbed. The difference is, in this flatbed was an integral hydraulic bale handler. It was always there, ready to go, but never in my way. After refining some things and correcting some problems, I just used it. I didn't know anything other than it really did make my life easier and allowed me to keep up with the workload around the farm here. After a couple of years of that, one of my good friends and fellow cattleman neighbor said, "You know, you really should do something with this." I didn't exactly know what he meant by that. This was a hard time in agriculture. In the early to mid 80s, we had 18% interest and even higher sometimes. Low commodity prices, there were tractorcades going to Washington, D.C., many farm foreclosures, and so it was really bad timing to think about starting any kind of ag enterprise. In spite of all of that, in late 83, after we tried and failed to find a company to build the beds for us, we went ahead and formed our company. We were unsure what to call it, and so we ended up using the C's from the first letters of our cattle operation, Cottonwood Cattle Company, and that's where the C came from. I didn't know much about manufacturing, but I did know that my bed design wasn't very manufacturing friendly in a lot of areas. So with that in mind, I contacted Rick McLean, a schoolmate and very skilled local welder. Rick and I spent the summer nights and evenings of '79 making those refinements to where the bed could be manufactured more efficiently. We're operating on virtually no cash, and so we carefully created some little ads and placed them in High Plains Journal, Grass and Grain, and a few other regional papers there in late 83. You can see on this slide that one of those ads in the High Plains Journal cost about $70, which was a lot to us. A lot of the calls would come in the evenings, and one of those callers was a rancher from northwest Kansas by the name of Otis Dewey. Otis called several times, and often he and I would talk about how rough the weather had been that day because it was a really rugged winter, how tough it had been to get the cattle fed that day, and he had a lot of questions about how this bed really worked, and I just told him how it worked for me, and before you know it, Otis called back one day and said he was ready to buy a bed, and so he thereby became the first Hydra Bed purchaser in December of '83. After Otis placed his order for the bed, Rick worked rapidly to get that bed finished, and here it is sitting in my driveway at the farm. Sean and Haley are helping me put the tail lights and things in it, because the next day Rick and I loaded it up and headed to Phillipsburg, where it was installed on Mr. Dewey's truck. This is a picture of Otis and his son Tom with that very first bed on their ranch in northwest Kansas. The family continues to operate, and at the last count that I knew, they had at least 8 different Hydra beds throughout those decades. The first winter we built beds, Rick built beds, in a rented building, and my cousin Gerald Hervey painted them. Here's a picture of Rick at the far end, me in the middle, and Gerald as we're getting ready to build our first own production facilities west of Sabetha. This is a picture of the building that Gerald and I built in partnership. That first production year of '84 was good, at least the first part of the year, and then the latter part of the year things didn't go so well. That's another story. If you'd like to know more about that, let me know, because I actually slid into depression in that time frame of late '84. On a technical note, The arms on the bed in the middle of 85 moved to the outer edges, as you can see in this picture. In about 1989, we asked Russ Harrell if he'd be interested in joining our company to help with inventory control, and that obviously morphed into dealer relations and eventually a partnership. From about 1990 through 1995, we expanded our location west of Sabetha a couple of times. Then in 1997, we made the decision to purchase land and build a new facility in the industrial park east of Sabetha. Linda and I take a lot of satisfaction in knowing that many cattle operators across the country continue to use and abuse their Hydra beds every day, just like we did in our cattle production years. Over the course of time, as we had other needs here on our own operation, we came up with products, we developed them to solve our own problems, and part of that development process was always some destructive real-life testing, and every product that we ever put out for public purchase had gone through that same process.